It's like Sheikh Faris bin Falih al-Khazraji, Hafidullah. He had a lecture where he was discussing. Someone asked him a question because they're bothering this sheikh about these things, which makes me angry because this man has had to deal with Daesh and everything else. Why are you terrorizing this man with this? So they sent him a clip where someone was saying that Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, the Imam, is more knowledgeable than some of the Salaf and other things. And the Sheikh was like, this is completely batil.
Subhanallah.
And not even the Sheikh himself ever even said this. But it's excessive sycophancy to the point where you're actually going above what he said of himself or what his contemporaries or what the madhahib that he belongs to says of him.
Subhanallah.
No one within the school says that, yeah, he's more knowledgeable than the Salaf. In fact, Taqi ibn Taymiyyah himself, when asked about Muwafiq ibn Qudama, said, since the time of al-Awza'i, no one has come out of Sham more knowledgeable than Muwafiq ibn Qudama. That includes himself. That includes himself. That means he believes that since Imam al-Awza'i, that there's been no one more knowledgeable in Sham that's come out since Muwafiq ibn Qudama.
Subhanallah.
That's placing him firmly under the jurisdiction of the Imam. But what can you say about it though? He's written an entire curriculum several times over. He did the Umdah, the Muqni', the Kafi, the Mughni. Then he turned around and did a Sharh twice on the Hidayah, and then another one on Ru'us Masail. He's got about 7-8 books on fiqh. And then i'tiqad. Then you have to remember about Ibn al-Jawzi. He's written a book in probably every single science of the revealed law. Then you have to remember he's also written on other things like on hydrology. There's a book I've got that he leaned on for hydrology. It was by another Hanbali scholar. What was his name? But Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he based his discussions on hydrology on this other book of this Hanbali scholar from Iran. And what happened is it led to the introduction of flush toilets in Andalus.
Subhanallah.
And what they were doing is they used gravity and water pressure as a flushing mechanism. And this is just after the time, because of that discussion on hydrology, that led to those advances from Baghdad that reached there, because Qurtubi and Ibn al-Jawzi were contemporaries. So that knowledge gets transplanted across. So we're talking about these people. Now, in spite of his rank, we're all familiar with Ibn al-Jawzi. He's not the Mu'tamid.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
He's a towering figure. He's towering. No author has written by his own hand more books than him. He wrote 2,000. No author by his own hand has written more. He's not more timid though. He's not more timid than madhahib. Nope. No, even though his book, it's like if you ask people, hey, what fiqh book did Ibn al-Jawzi, what fiqh did you have a hard time, students of knowledge. He did write one. Hold on, let me think. Hold on. What? No, not that one. Wait, hold on. What was it? Al-Madhhab? It's like, no, that was his son, Muhyiddin. Oh yeah, that's right. Right? They have a hard time remembering.
He was a Shaykh al-Islam by actual definition, not real by honor.
Yes.
But even then, he was
he was reeled in. Still not Mu'tamid. Because what had been agreed upon.
Remarkable.
The foundations of what is, listen, this is the agreed upon. These are the agreed upon principles. Now, you want to talk about hadith? Now that's a different game now. Ibn al-Jawzi is a high-ranking figure in hadith. He's such a high ranking. I mean, he kind of developed his own unique style for the discussion of hadith. And so people after his time on his al-Mawdu'at, they had to kind of discuss, listen, you know, he was too strict in some of these areas, and you have to understand when he says this is da'if, he's talking about this. Because he has his own style in terms of discussing things. He's got his own terminology, which he discusses. He wrote big books on Jarh and Ta'dil and everything.
Like he deserved a complete podcast about Ibn.
Yeah, I mean, he's a massive figure. So when you look at then when you look at Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, this Imam, he's firmly placed in that tradition. And so because he's firmly placed in that tradition, he has areas that he stands out in. And in fiqh, he was a dynamo. He was an absolute whiz. You know, he was a dynamo in that area because of his love for that. And then he also contributed to tafsir, although he never wrote a tafsir, in terms of discussing tafsir, like how to get a good grounding and understand the Quran. He gave some good pointers, but not enough to like make a tafsir. He doesn't have a tafsir. Just like Ibn Al-Qayyim, he didn't write a tafsir. That's not what these men did. These men were dealing with fiqh and usul fiqh. So Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim's I'lam al-Waqi'een, because you have usul fiqh, but then you have the qawa'id of the madhahib, which are 100. So usul fiqh is just the usul is 8, but the qawa'id of the madhahib. So there's sometimes someone will give a rule where like Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, the Imam, he'll give a ruling where it'll be in agreement with the qawa'id of the madhab, although it's not the mu'tamid, but it'll be in agreement because he's using the usul of Imam Ahmad. That's what he's using. So it'll be in agreement with the qawa'id. So they'll say, listen, we're going to save this ruling. It's not mu'tamid, but what we'll do is we'll put it in storage. We'll save it. Because if something comes up later, this might apply. Right? So you have the qawa'id of the madhab and the usul al-fiqh. There's two different sets of schema that these men are working within. Right? So when you're talking about the Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that's the methodology that he's working in. He has this huge methodology that he's moving within. A man sits down and listens to the Musnad read to him 3 times, winds up memorizing Sihah Sitta. It's subhanallah, it's hard to find people today that have that. It's hard. I mean, one of the big hadith scholars of today, an Ethiopian, Sheikh Ali ibn Musa al-Ethiopi, he died just recently. He's got like a 40-volume commentary on the Musnad. Big Ethiopian sheikh. He died just recently. Those people are rare in this day and time. Those people are rare, subhanAllah. Let alone, being able to cite these collections. But then you also have your own chain of transmission as well. So you have the Imam, you can tell by his citation style that he wasn't just citing books. He used to write down hadith by hand. He was writing them down on boards. And he'd write them down and memorize it, then you're allowed to wipe it off. So Syrians were doing that, the same thing as the Mauritanians for hadith. But the Mauritanians do it for all the ulum, but they were doing it for hadith. This is the type of people you're dealing with. So when you grasp that and you understand his placement within the madhab, but also the history of the Muslims, you have to give him his due respect.
Yeah. And
that's why I've been very careful about how I speak about him, because I always try to speak at him within the balance of the school to which he belonged. Be told in this matter, we wouldn't be able to get next to him anyway if he was here, because we don't have the qualifications to be sitting in his class. Maybe Jumu'ah khutbah we'd be there, but the rest of his classes are closed. Yeah, we wanted to sit in. No, brothers, one of the bawab, like the doorman, he'd come over, brothers, what are you doing? Oh, we wanted to sit in a hadith class. What, have you memorized the Quran, brothers? Well, I memorized the Quran. Okay, all right. Have you how many times have you listened to the Musnad? What? Well, I mean, I've heard it, I've heard half of it once. No, you have to go, Akhi. Come on, let's go. These are closed classes. You have to listen to it at least 3 times. You can't be here. We would be there for tafsir, alhamdulillah. It take us about 2 years to get through the tafsir class, 2-3 years. But we couldn't be there for hadith. We could probably be there for the math class when he taught algebra or conic functions. We could be there for that. Conic functions, math, and astronomy. We could be there for that. But some of the other stuff we couldn't be there. So no, I'm sorry, you don't have the prerequisites to join this class. You don't have. But you have people talking, just very gingerly about these things, as if they're talking about a neighbor or a colleague or something like this.
Exactly.
And it's simply not like that. It's simply not like that. We have to show far more deference than we've been showing.
And I'd like to ask a specific question. This is a strong argument, of course, against the sycophants, but against the revilers, sometimes what they do is, I don't know why, but they tend to quote Imam Ibn Hajar Al-Haitami, a fatwa of his.
Yeah.
But just one thing I want to ask is, when we are talking about the person, we are looking at eyewitness testimonies, right? So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, let's say I'll talk about his mistakes. First of all, they weren't out of ignorance, but out of ijtihad. So the scholars at his time, they knew this, they kept this in mind. And that's why henceforth he wasn't immediately declared a mujassim and the like, or a mubtadi'. But when Imam Ibn Hajar Al-Haytami comes along, that's already a century or 2 later, right? That's not eyewitness anymore. Do we keep this in mind?
In Al-Fatawa Al-Hadithiyah, this expression, As-Sawaq Al-Muhriqa, is referred to Dalum Mudil regarding Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah. But you have to remember, he dies, Hajar Al-Haitami dies 972 of the Hijri. So you're looking at 200 years removed from these events. And being 200 years removed from the events, you have to always make sure, are you accurately representing these events as they've happened?
Sure.
And if you find that you've become harsher down the line, what for? What for? Ibn Hajar Al-Haytami and similar sheikhs like this, because by this time you're talking about Imam Suyuti and others, that now this issue of visiting the graves and setting out to visiting them, it's not only permitted now, but it's become an established practice where people are getting paid from it now. So it seems like you're attacking, it's something that's gone from being permitted to being treated like it's a sunnah mu'akkada.
Okay.
So now it's become something almost normative, when in reality, but no one's going to say this is sunnah mu'akkada to do it, other than the Rasulullah ﷺ when you're on Hajj or Umrah, what have you. But no one's going to tell you, yes, you should go and set out to do this as it's sunnah mu'akkada. It's permitted. Some might say it's a sunnah in certain given circumstances. For Abu Bakr and Umar, the Rasulullah starting out, if you're going to make Umrah, starting out from Al-Madinah first, or Hajj, starting out on optional Hajj, starting out from Al-Madinah first. Yes, but these things became so normative, right? Which is curious, because Imam al-Suyuti actually has a really glowing tribute to Taqi ibn Taymiyyah. He has a really glowing tribute to him. He's more balanced in that way. Maybe because he has a lot of rare rulings, and perhaps he has that understanding that, well, you know, I've got something in common with him. Because Imam Suyuti, Jalaluddin Suyuti, rahimahullah, had some rarities as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you look at the history, you know, I try to stay as close to contemporary, which is eyewitness, or the secondhand witness accounts, because it's going to give you a better picture of the individual. The more, the better, and the more authoritative, the better. When you begin to lean on tertiary evidence, we have to say, why are we leaning on tertiary evidence? Is it because we don't have enough of eyewitness accounts or secondhand accounts?
Right.
We have enough because the counsels are preserved by both opponents.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Ibn Shakir was far from or Al-Qutbi was far from a friend of Taqi ibn Taymiyyah. But we have his literature. It's with us in manuscript and printed form, right? Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani, we know he's firmly placed within the Ash'ari, but he still wrote a balanced review. Imam al-Zahabi, Ibn Kathir, who was Ash'ari, taught the Jami' Ashrafiyya, which as a condition, you have to make the declaration that you are Ash'ari upon entrance into that school.
Wow.
So we know that he was definitely Ash'ari. So it's putting things together and recognizing them for the historical accounts. People understand that there were things, okay, listen, this is mistaken here. I can't follow this here. Okay, these things, no, that mustn't be followed. Everyone's aware of that. But when you start to add, or you start to accumulate additional things, or you start to add to something to a degree to where the original principle gets lost, that's where you actually have to have people to rebalance it. Because you've lost that balance. You become so preoccupied with making this person a object of ridicule, right? So you have brothers that I know that are students of knowledge that came back to me with reports about how they witnessed people urinate on his grave, or they broke his tombstone, and other just wicked and disgusting things. The same thing with Muawiyah, they throw rocks at his grave. And there's people now, because of the social media era that we're in, there's people that have taken recordings of it now and posted them online, of them defacing or trying to deface Muawiyah's grave, or throwing rocks at it, kicking the tombstones of certain people that I guess we're supposed to disagree with. And so that's why I'm glad that Imam al-Bulti and Ibn Al-Qayyim were buried in plain sight, because you're less likely, because it's not a secluded location. So no one's going to have the guts in broad daylight to like urinate on a grave, or try something where it's guarded, like 24-hour around the clock guarding. Someone's going to be less likely to try something like that. But if it's secluded, or there's bushes of shrubbery, or it's in a crypt that's away from the people, or anything like that, people's courage somehow fills their heart during that time.
And did they like put some fence around his grave at the moment?
They did put a fence around it, but they also open it during visiting hours.
Oh, okay.
Right, because you can't not have visiting hours. Then also, in addition to that, there was a discussion, because it's at the back of the general hospital. And at the back of the general hospital, you then had a discussion about people trying to demolish it, because the government said, well, we'll just demolish it and move it. So then there had to be an outcry by a whole bunch of different people to say, don't demolish it, leave it where it is. So it's one of those very strange things about him where he has this overhanging shadow that he's cast over so many other people. And he's one of those imams where his books they've been handed down to us. Although they're singularly handed down, they're not heavily written, they're singularly handed down. They're still with us today and still impacting people. The unfortunate part is that what they're being used for.
Yes.
What they're used for by sycophants or what they're used for by revilers. Is that this is the unfortunate part, because there's nothing, if someone reads his literature, whether they're his fatwa or his more prosaic works, there's nothing in there that you could read and as a sane human being take away and understand that, yeah, it's okay to commit murder. There's nothing that you could take away from that. There's nothing that you could take away from that to say, oh yes, it's okay to commit rape. It's okay to blow up the grave of Hajar ibn Adi in order to move his remains, to destroy the grave of Manoui, who he sat with when he was 10 years old, learned hadith from. Like, what would possess you to do that?
I find it so despicable when sometimes I find articles or blogs which state that Imam ibn Taymiyyah is the one or the originator of terrorism of today. I find that so despicable when I see those posts.
Yeah. Whereas when you actually examine it and you actually look at his life and you study his life, you can see, I mean, from 661 to 690, no issue.
Yeah.
Until 690, there's an incident. Then 708 and on, he's in and out of jail. So when does he have time to inspire violence?
Yeah, this is interesting.
For the short duration of time that he's out, he's making jihad.
Yeah.
And writing books.
I've read people saying that this jihad that he made against the Tatars, that this was wrong. That this was incorrect, that he did this out of his own. Could you address this part then?
Okay, when we talk about the Tatars, this goes back to the discussion of that I included in the opening.
Yes.
Of the adab of hospitality, which we did a recording on the Reasons for Faith side. On the Tatars, there were a section of Tatars that when they came into the Muslim world, feigned conversion to Islam. And what they were doing is they were following a Constantinian type of Islam, in which they publicly affirmed Islam, but then in private or in other locations were still worshiping the old gods. They were still engaged in shamanism. Their legal system was a careful mixture of Judaism, Islam, Christianity, shamanism, and other things that came about from just Genghis Khan's own personal desires and personal thoughts on a given situation.
Yeah.
So when these people said we're Muslims and we're Sufis, but we're committing every single type of major kufr, this is why scholars started to make this division between Tasawwuf and Suluk. Originally, Tasawwuf and Suluk were one thing. But Suluk had to be separated from Tasawwuf because they said, well, the scholars said, if you are saying that you are a Sufi and you adhere to Tasawwuf, but the actions of the people of Tasawwuf don't match with it, then you in actuality are an imposter. You are not a Sufi.
SubhanAllah.
So you must have the Tasawwuf and the Suluk that goes with it. So what you had in this time is you had people who Ibn Rajab as well as Imam Taymiyyah and Al-Zahabi discussed how some of these people, they venerated the fast of Ramadan, but they don't pray.
Yeah.
They wouldn't bend their back in one rak'ah, but they love fasting Ramadan.
Wow.
And what do we see for some of the people today? The exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where this is a Tatar form of religion.
Interesting.
It's a Tatar form of religion. And it's so strange because each salah is 10 minutes, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So they said, well, don't want to, or I can't, I'm too busy. But going without food for between 12 to 18 hours, which is far more arduous. Why would you be willing to do that? Salah is actually easier. So a lot of what's happening when they say, well, it wasn't correct, is jihad against them.
Yes.
Then you have to say, well, then why did Ibn Rajab do so? Why was Ibn Al-Qayyim out there? Why was al-Zahabi calling for it? Why were these other people? Because you have to remember the Mamluks were also in the earth during this time.
Yeah.
And they finally broke the back of the Tatar offensive.
Oh, right, yeah.
So were they wrong?
Allah Akbar. SubhanAllah.
I mean, it's just this goes up there with the same thing when people when you try to discuss with people about the Mujahideen or these things, and they deny every single jihad movement.
Yes.
Nope. Afghanistan's no good. None of the stuff in the Caucasus, none of the stuff in the Balkans. Then ask them, okay, so are you denying the principle that there's always going to be jihad in the earth because the hadith in Abu Dawood is jihad has been made extant from the time I was sent until you fight. Last time I Ummah fights the Masih ad-Dajjal. That means it's always in the earth. Where is it today? Where is there jihad in the world today? And you'll find that, okay, they're not denying the texts, but it's something worse. They're denying the meaning of jihad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Because when you ask them that question, they can't tell you. That means they don't believe there's any. They don't believe there's any. So everyone's just Salafi and Wahhabi, huh?
Yes.
No, there's no jihad in the world today. No one's fighting for Islam. I'm talking about not fire extinguisher, not taking a good exam. I mean actual weaponry.
Yeah.
No one in the earth, no one on earth is making jihad in the world. So then what do you do with this hadith in Abu Dawood?
Yeah, no one seems to get it right.
Yeah, so what do we do with this? What, the Mujahideen have never taken a loss? What, have you not read about the Battle of Uhud? Yeah, but then this happens. These are setbacks that happen in war. Miscalculations happen. Sometimes people misunderstand stuff and things go wrong. Sometimes people veer off on their own. That's what Fuja'a did. Abu Bakr gave him one directive: go and collect the zakat from these people. Fuja'a was supposed to go down there, and instead he started killing people. So Abu Bakr had to go down there because he felt the people disrespected him by not handing over the zakat al-fitr immediately. Start killing people. So Abu Bakr now had to fight the people refusing to give zakat, and he had to fight them. But this is the thing. So when we look at the Tatars and the religion that they claimed as Islam, we have to start asking you, oh, okay, so you think that a man having 1,000 wives is that was Islamic, was it? You think making 7 circuits around the fire absolves you from Hajj? You think saying that Genghis Khan was the sun, his mother was visited by the sun at night, and conceive Genghis Khan, who's actually the son of the sun. You think that matches with La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah? You, huh?
And the fact that they were
You think killing 2 million Muslims in 2 weeks?
Allah.
You think that's the deen, is it? Burning books, throwing bodies overboard. So that's the old time, that's the ancient religion, is it?
Right.
But people don't think about the stuff because they're thinking of, oh no, they're, violence or whatever else. We have to keep this very, very simple. The Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he never said most of the Ummah are mushriks. He never said most of the Ummah are guilty of grave worship. He said this group of people that swept in here have not properly entered into the religion of Islam. And if we think that there's some exaggeration in that, okay, let's look at the Mughal Empire. Those are the Tatars that settled in India. What did they make? Name me 7 major inventions that they did. They didn't, because they were too busy syncretizing religion and doing all matter of wickedness. Their one claim to fame is the Taj Mahal, a grave.
Yeah.
You have the Mughals, the Tatars, to thank for that. So apparently, not all of them that entered into the deen did so sincerely. Apparently. Especially if they're worshiping the old gods, not making any salah, then fasting Ramadan, but sometimes eating meat that they've stabbed with their spears and saying Allah wanted it to die like this. So, but hold on, those guys are Muslim? What exactly is going on? We have to be honest. And we have to give things their proper treatment. Because their fellow tribesmen, although distant cousins, the Seljuks, were fighting them. What are they fighting them for? I thought we're all Muslim.
This is even when they were Muslim.
Yeah.
Right.
What I thought we're all Muslim.
Yeah. Interesting.
What are we gonna do? I thought, weren't we all Muslim? Yeah. Well then, you don't make jihad against other Muslims. You enjoin the right and forbid the wrong. But you don't make jihad, because the definition of jihad is qital al-kuffar.
No.
Fighting the kuffar. But yet the Seljuks said that they're making jihad.
So this is interesting, because by the same argument, we should actually then say that Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi falls in the same category as quote-unquote terrorist then in this case.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the same thing.
We have to start asking these questions. Well, what was he doing?
Yeah.
What was Nuruddin Zinki? What was he doing? All these things we have to start now digging around and asking questions. But it's not the questions so much that we have to ask as it's questions to the person that's bringing forward these doubts. Yeah. Where are you getting this from?
Exactly.
But we know good and well where they're getting it from, unfortunately. So the issue is Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah's scholarship and his other effort. He's one of the people who was actually able to complete so much of his Islam in his lifetime.
Wow.
You know, we have a man who he was able to make Hajj, he was able to make jihad, he was locked up, he was able to write, he was able to do the other 5 pillars. There's people today that they're not imprisoned and they don't do their 5 pillars. They're not locked up. They're not in jail. They're not suffering any setbacks, but somehow can't find a way to make Hajj. These are wealthy people And they'll tell you they are because they're so proud to let you know that you don't have how much they have. They're excited to let you know, hey, you're nothing. I make 300 a year, 300,000 a year, and you don't. But yet they're better than the people that came before them. But they can't finish their obligations.
Subhanallah.
This man's in jail. And he's getting out, completing obligations. How? Subhanallah.
Subhanallah.
It's amazing that he was able to do as much as he did in the short period of time that he had.
Allahu Akbar.
It's remarkable.
If I may ask you this, I don't know. To me, it seems like a lot. The revilers and even the sycophants, it seems they're using Taqi and Taymiyyah to gather a following. Does this look like what's happening?
Some of the things you could perhaps say this because hot button issues and hot button names. It used to be that people did this to bring a crowd at the local masjid, but now because of how social media is designed, you can bring clicks online.
Right.
So now people say, what do we say about so-and-so? That's the buzzword. That's the sentence you always hear. What do you say about this person?
Yes.
What do you say about that person?
Exactly.
You know, what are your thoughts on this person? Right? It's like, wait a minute, where's all this coming from? And I've said to people so many times, well, what if I said, yes, we have to follow him now and no one else? Would you do it? Well, no. So then why are you asking about it? If you're not going to do anything about it, nothing's going to come from it. It's the same thing when someone asked me in Ramadan, when did you start? What if I told you that I'm not starting today, I'm starting in another week? Would you follow me, break your fast and follow me? No. So then what do you want to know for?
Those are questions with ill intentions.
What would you want to know for?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so when did you do eat? Oh, we haven't yet. I'm going to do it in 2 weeks. What if I said that? Would you do eat in 2 weeks with me? Well, no. Why? So what's the nature of this question? There's something else behind it. So people are fine to debate and to argue and fight, but the fact of the matter is, if you ask them, well, what have you memorized? What have you memorized? Well, you see, brother, I have a busy life. So did Taqi and Taymiyyah. He was locked up from 708 on. What are you talking about? He was locked up for that time onwards. That's 20 years he's just locked up. So what exactly do we want to do? He was 66 when he died. And look at all of what he completed in his life. There's people that are in their 90s and haven't even begun to live. And then they get to the end of their life and they feel all these regrets about what they wish they could have done, what they should have done. Oh, if only I'd done this. Oh, Allah, please. But no, you had 95 years. People have to be held to like a higher standard. So the Imam's rank is one that has to be respected, but we have to understand that there are limits to it.
Exactly.
There are limits to it. That we have to balance him against a much wider tradition.